In June 2014, President Jacob Zuma announced the advent of government's Integrated Urban Development Framework, a policy document that would provide a new deal for South African cities and towns and put municipalities at the center of integrated urban development. It builds on various chapters in the National Development Plan 2030, particularly extending Chapter 8, which is about transforming human settlements and the national space economy. In Chapter 8, the National Development Plan outlines a set of principles for spatial transformation, the principle of spatial justice, the principle of spatial sustainability, the principle of spatial resilience, the principle of spatial quality, and the principle of spatial efficiency. Public consultations are aimed at seeking broad societal contribution, improvement and support for the 8 levers identified for our country's sustainable urbanization. Lever 1. Integrated spatial planning. We must have cities and towns that are spatially organized in a way that guides social and economic investments, that promote integrated social and economic development, resulting in a sustainable quality of life for all citizens. Lever 2. Integrated transport and mobility. Our cities and towns must create places where people can walk, cycle, and use different transport modes to easily access social and economic opportunities, educational institutions, health facilities, and places of recreation. Lever 3. Integrated sustainable human settlements. We need our cities and towns to become places that are spatially equal, integrated, and multifunctional, and places in which settlements are well connected to our essential and social services, as well as to areas of work opportunities for all our people. They must also be places where we all feel safe from violence and crime. Lever 4. Integrated urban infrastructure. Our cities and towns will have to transition from traditional approaches to resource-efficient infrastructure systems that provide for both universal access and more inclusive economic growth. As urban areas are also particularly vulnerable to climate change risks because of the high concentrations of people, buildings and infrastructure, it is essential that risk reduction, awareness and adaptation are embedded in our approaches to urban planning and infrastructure development. Lever 5. Efficient land governance and management. Our cities and towns must grow through investments in land and property, through efficient land governance and management, providing income for municipalities. This is what allows further investments in infrastructure and services, resulting in inclusive, multifunctional urban spaces. Lever 6. Inclusive economic development. We need to have cities and towns that are dynamic and efficient, fostering entrepreneurialism and innovation, and sustaining livelihoods, enabling economic growth, and thereby generating the tax base needed to sustain and expand public services and amenities. Lever 7. Empowered active communities. Our cities and towns must be home to socially and culturally diverse citizens who are actively involved in city life and committed to making South Africa work for all. Lever 8. Effective urban governance. It is crucial that we have a system across the board in which cities and towns have the necessary institutional, fiscal and planning capabilities to build inclusive, resilient and livable urban spaces. Everyone has a role to play in achieving this. A dedicated and developmental local government plays an essential role. The rest of the government system has to lend an coordinated support and commitment to this effort as well.